Ashita. She is by profession a lawyer, and this is the 28th series of the Women in Leadership, which was initiated by our Managing Trustee Jairaj sir. So we are very happy to have ma'am with us for this event, and I would like to inform ma'am that there are students from almost all the streams on an account of 5 to 10 per stream per class, so that they listen to you, they get motivated and get a vision of what they would like to do in their career, and think over all that they hear from you, so that that becomes a building for their career also, for their future also, and for their whatever their dreams also. So over to ma'am for a inspiring event.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet all of you. You have something to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, I'll wait for you.
Good morning, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to the 28th Women in Leadership series organized by Maharani Lakshmi Amini College for Women Autonomous. I am Ashita K. Nair, your host for today, and I feel truly honored to be your host for this inspiring event. Today is not just another program, it is a celebration of strength, resilience, ambition, and leadership embodied by women who are shaping the world around us. I would like to extend a warm and respectful welcome to our esteemed dignitaries, our Honorable Chief Guest of the day, Ms. Ashita Bhagwan, our respected Principal, Dr. Nanda Kulkarni, distinguished faculty members, and my dear friends. Now, I would like to briefly introduce the purpose behind today's event. The Women in Leadership series is an initiative by our college aimed at empowering young women through knowledge, inspiration, and real-life experiences. Maharani Lakshmi Amini College for Women Autonomous, established in 1972, has consistently focused on imparting quality education, instilling moral values, and nurturing leadership qualities among students. Through this initiative, students get the opportunity to interact with accomplished women leaders, learn from their journeys, understand real-world challenges and opportunities. This platform bridges the gap between academic learning and real-world leadership, inspiring young women to take charge of their futures and contribute meaningfully to the society. Now comes the most awaited moment of the day, introducing our esteemed chief guest. It is my privilege to introduce Ms. Ashita Bhagwan. Ms. Ashita Bhagwan is a distinguished dual licensed attorney, California and India, an angel investor and a mentor with extensive experience in guiding startups, entrepreneurs and multinational corporations across the globe. She is the managing partner at Inventors Law Technology Partners, where she leads a dynamic team handling corporate, commercial, and tech-related legal matters. With an incredible career, she has advised over 1,500 startups, founders, and investors, worked across India, the United States, Europe, and Africa. Specialized in venture capital, mergers and acquisition, and cross-border transactions. Before this, she spent over a decade practicing as a lawyer in New York and California. She is also a global speaker, frequently conducting workshops and sessions on startup strategies, fundraisings, and international business structuring. Her expertise, dedication, and global exposure makes her an inspiring role model for aspiring professionals. I now request one of our students to please hand over the token of appreciation as gratitude. Thank you, ma'am. Now, with great honor and enthusiasm, I invite Ms. Ashita Bhagwan to address the gathering. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for coming here today. It's a pleasure to see a house full and house full of women more than anything else. I'm going to sit down if you don't mind. So, yeah, I just want to make this as informal as possible, right? So, I will tell you a little bit about myself, about what I do, and about the career that I have chosen for myself. But I'd love to hear from all of you in terms of questions, in terms of doubts that you may have, or any kind of issues that you think you should bring up, because the idea with this session is to make it as interactive as possible. Yes? And everybody here understands what I'm saying, right? Okay. Because I don't hear any voices, so it's good to know that. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Ashita Bhagwan. I'm the managing partner at a cross-border law firm that's headquartered in San Francisco in the United States. Okay, so my career, if you look at it, it started as, I was a student like any of you, and then I decided I wanted to go into law school. I did 5 years of law school in India, then I went abroad, I studied at New York, and then I got my license to practice there, and I practiced in the US for more than a decade. And at that point of time, we decided that we wanted to move back to India and come here, because I was born and raised here, right? I'm a Malaysian girl. ಇಲ್ಲೇ ನಾನು ಹುಟ್ಟು ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ದು, ಸೊ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಆಸೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬಂದ್ವಿ. ನನ್ನ ಮಗ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಈಸ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಹೀ ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ 10-11-year-old boy who is looking at all of us and trying to figure out what to do. I have Dhriti here with me. She is interning, shadowing me today because she's considering a career in law. Now the reason I tell you all this is because, on paper this looks fantastic, right? I mean, if you look at it, it says, okay, here's somebody, she's a woman, she's studied, she's successful and all of that, right? But there is another side of it that most people don't see, the unglamorous side. I'm also a working mother. I live with my in-laws. I have aging parents. I have an 11-year-old whose responsibility is mine, along with my husband, of course, right? But I have all of these things. And while things look really glamorous on the outside, the reality of it is that the challenges that many of you or your mothers or your aunts or whoever you see face is common to all of us who are in similar positions, right? And when I say similar, I'm not talking about, what kind of role you perform at the workplace or anything else, but the challenges that we face, and you can ask any of your teachers, your principals, but there will be issues that you will face on a day-to-day basis, which will not go away just because you have gotten higher in life, right? What happens on the other hand is that if you start to embrace those challenges, they only make you stronger, and they only help you grow higher and higher at a much faster pace than somebody else who's had everything laid out for you, right? See, one of the biggest challenges, so I'm a parent as well, right? One of the biggest challenges that we face as parents is to draw a balance, or to strike a balance between providing for your child all the aspects that you did not have growing up, right? And I'm not talking about economical, right? I mean, money is one thing, you can buy it and you can give it to them, but you want to give them the experiences that you didn't have growing up. But at the same time, you also want to teach them that, this is the right thing. And how do you teach them that something is the right thing? By making sure that you are giving them the ability to endure. There are hardships, they overcome the hardships all by themselves, and they get, they learn to deal with it themselves, right? So we learn a lot of that as parents, as working adults that are trying to do the best for our children, right? Now what I want to tell, the students here in this room is, don't ever think of, where you come from or the challenges that you face as a shortcoming, right? Or as a challenge, or the fact that you walk into a room and you see so many other people who seem a lot more successful, they are better dressed than you, they speak better English than you, they are able to present themselves a lot better, and you are wondering many times, is this the right place for me to be? How did I even come here, right? What exactly brought me to this room? Is there something that, did I come here by chance? Are people going to find out that I don't know what they think I know? Right? That's what we call imposter syndrome, right? Don't ever let that stop you, because the moment you give in to your fears, which is, oh, I'm not able to do that, right? I'm not able to get to the next stage, that is when you stop yourself. You become your biggest enemy, right? What you should be doing instead is continue to do it, right? Persistence. Every single day you decide let's say you decide that you want to become a public speaker, right? It doesn't have to be something phenomenal, right? You start with a small group. Every single day you do one exercise, right? Whatever exercise has been given to you as part of that public speaking thing. Do that one exercise every single day. It's okay if it doesn't work out exactly how you want it. But stay consistent. Make sure that you repeat that every day, every week, every month, whatever it is, right? And you will see results at the end of it. And so these are things that are quite basic to all of us, right? In the sense that you apply this across any area that you want to do, you apply this across any sector, any aspect that you want to do, which is practice, right? Practice makes perfect. That's one aspect. The other thing that I want to understand here is how many of you are in the commerce stream? So you have a good one. Alright, and how many of you are in the science stream? Nobody's here in science. How many of you are in the arts stream? Okay, now let me ask you, and I want to open up the floor, right? So maybe one of you can answer. Now, when you think of law as a profession, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Anybody? Arguing, okay?
Justice.
Justice, okay? Choosing what is right, okay? Fantastic. Sorry? Freedom, okay? Freedom, fantastic. Responsibility? Did someone say responsibility? Yes, absolutely, absolutely, right? So, you see all the different perspectives that people have of law, right? I'll tell you another perspective that I have. Everything that all of you said is true. It's not that it's not true, right? But what I want you to know is that a single person doesn't have to have all of those traits in order to become a lawyer, right? So she said arguing, somebody here said arguing, right? I will tell you, so I have a law firm with 25 lawyers that work for me, and 75% of those are women, okay? And among the 75%, other than maybe 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3, none of them can argue. None of them can, right? And think about this. This is a lawyer in a top law firm who runs, multi-million-dollar deals across the globe, right? A lot of my clients are international. So we have people who are talking to clients in America, in Africa, in China, and they do not argue. They are not good at arguing, but they are very successful as lawyers, right? Somebody else here said justice, right? Justice is the other thing that comes to mind, which is also true, right? When you think about the law, when you think about the court, when you think about judges, you say, okay, everything has to be fair, and that's what they are working to do. But the whole concept of justice is really perspective, right? How do you decide that something is the right thing to do, right? So, for example, in my field, which is corporate law, I'm a corporate lawyer. For us, this concept of justice is something that each party argues for whatever their position is, right? And at the end of the day, unlike in a court where both the parties are adversarial meaning they are opposite to each other, right? They are not looking towards the same goal. Whereas what we do in corporate law, in the transactions that we work on, both parties are on the same side, but they are negotiating for their rights. So they are not adversarial to each other, because after the transaction happens, they both work together as one team, right? So in cases like this, the question becomes, how do you decide what is fair, right? To each party, whatever he is asking for is fair. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you go for a job interview. You guys will graduate from here and then you go out for a job interview, right? Now, from the employer's perspective, you start a salary negotiation. The amount that you are asking for is probably based on the fact that these are my requirements. This is my house rent, this is my, transportation, this is what I need in order to survive. So you come up with a figure and then you say, okay, now I have a degree, I have a BCom degree, right? So that's going to add some value to your firm. So I think that this is the right amount, and you present an amount. Now, if you look at it from the employer's perspective, he's going to say, I have somebody who has a BCom degree, I agree. But this BCom degree is not going to be any use unless I give him some training, unless I give her the ability to work on actual matters that are, whatever. If you go to a CA's office, then actual clients who have brought their case to him. If you go to a lawyer's office, then actual situations that clients have come up to me with, right? So there's a lot of training involved. So from the employer's perspective, he's going to say, whatever you asked for, minus 50% of that is what the fair value is, right? Now in a situation like this, how do you decide what is justice? Each perspective, each party has their perspective and each of them are valid in what they are asking, correct? Right? The idea I'm trying to present here is that justice, arguing, what were the other skills you said? Freedom is something that you asked for. These are all aspects of the profession that are true, but are not necessarily descriptive of the entire profession, right? You can have a sliver of it, and then you can say, okay, this is something that's really interesting and I want to do it, right? This is a skill that I have. Let's say that one of you are really good at research, right? If you decide that, hey, I'm really good at research, or when somebody asks me something, I'm able to find out why it happened, how it happened, and then ask people, read articles, listen to podcasts, and then come up with it. That's a great skill for you to have if you decide to become a lawyer. It's a great skill for other professions as well, but since I'm here and I'm talking about law, I'll tell you that it's a great skill to have, because when I hire a first-year associate, right, somebody who's finished law school and who starts out, the first thing that I think of is not whether they can sit at a table and negotiate the deal, is not whether they can go to court and present the case before the judge, is whether, if I give them an assignment, whether they're going to be able to put together a note on it and give it back to me, right? I'm going to ask them, let's say that I have a new client who's come in and then they want to start a business in the line of, they want to give loans, right? Now loans are governed by the RBI. Now this is an individual who wants to give loans. Is that something he can do with a license, or can he do it without a license, or does he require a license? Now the answer to that question, I'm not going to know off the top of my head, right? So I will have one of my team members come in and say, hey, this is the question that they have asked. Can you do some research and come back, right? So nobody is expecting you to have everything laid out on day one, but what you should be able to do is go back and say, okay, let me break it down and say, okay, this is the way that I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start with, okay, what is the question that they've asked? Now, where should I look to see what the answer is, right? Should I look at the RBI statute? Should I look at the SEBI? How do I do that? Then you go back to your partner, or you go back to the lawyer that you're working with and say, I'm looking at these, is this the right direction, or should I look somewhere else? Then go back, read it, right? Summarize that whole, whatever you have read, right? The statute that you've read, summarize it, right? And see if it applies to what situation you are in. And if it does, great. Write it down, summarize it, present it to your senior and say, okay, this is what I've done, is this right? If you feel you're not satisfied, you've not got the right answer, then look at a few more books. Listen to a few more podcasts. Today is the day and age where you have abundant access to free information, right? On the internet, on YouTube, on several platforms you have access to it. So there's no reason for us to not be able to do that, right? You should be able to go out there, find the information that you need, present it to your senior. If they give you some feedback, take it, add that to the note that you have presented, and then bring it back to them, right? That is what somebody said, responsibility, right? So you can show that responsibility in this way, because you've been given a project. Make sure that you finish the project. Don't leave it in between. That itself is responsibility. Responsibility is not only bringing in a salary at the end of the month, paying your rent, paying your water bill. That's not the only thing. That's great. If you can do that, it's great. But when you've been given something as a student, as a daughter, as a sister, as a sister-in-law, whatever your role is, if you've been given something, make sure you complete that, right? Make sure you finish that. That's the important thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to pause here and see if anybody has any questions, anything at all that you want to talk about.
Okay. All right. One additional thing which I do want to bring up, for for women is that financial independence is not an option. What does that mean? What that means is that at all points of time, once you start working, that is, and please make sure that you guys are working hard to get an education, to get a degree, right? So go out there and get a job and become financially independent, right? That's not a choice that you have, right? It's not something where you say, okay, I don't have to do it because my parents got me married and they are taking really good care of me, so I don't have to do it. It's great. If that happens to you, fantastic. I'm very happy for you, right? But please make sure that you don't think of that as the only option for yourselves, right? Because all of you in this room are educated. And this education has to come in handy at some point. If not for anybody else, for yourselves, right? So please make sure that you educate yourselves on financial independence, right? And what I mean by that is, again, there are different levels to it, and I'll go into some of these. The first step is, of course, making sure that you put your degree to good use, right? So go out, get a job, earn money, put it in a bank account, save, all of that good stuff, right? Number one is actually, get a resource or get a source for the financial independence. The second thing, and very important, is for you to educate yourself on what needs to be done with that, right? Don't rely on somebody in the family to do it for you. Don't rely on somebody else to tell you what needs to be done with it. You do the research yourself and figure out what needs to be done. Do I need to invest this somewhere? Do I need to put it in a savings bank account? Do I need to save towards a particular goal, right? I want to say, I want to buy a car by the end of the year, right? So if I have to do that, how do I do it, right? Do I have to take a loan? If I have to take a loan, then this needs to be this is the interest rate, this is the amount that I can take. Think about all that and make sure that you are involved in that decision-making process, right? And how can you be involved? By educating yourselves, by getting knowledge, right? And like I said earlier, knowledge is unlike before. There are a lot of free resources available on the internet if you ask the right questions, right? So start with that, right? Start with a simple Google search. Start with ChatGPT. You're all familiar with AI, right? It's taken over the world in the last year or two. And that has made life so much simpler and so efficient that people are able to do the work of 100 people with a team of 2 or 3, right? Because of the way things have advanced. And the only way for you to get ahead of it is for you to educate yourself, for you to be better at it, right? So make sure that you make use of that so that you work towards a financially independent future, right? Not everybody is going to be able to do that right away, right? It won't come naturally to many of us because we are so used to somebody else is taking care of it. And as children and as students like you may or may not have that responsibility. Some of you may be in situations where you're actually doing it. If you have a younger sibling, for example, you're taking care of that younger sibling. You're making sure that, he or she gets ready, goes to school, eats lunch, whatever is required, right? Many of you may not have that luxury of having that opportunity, right? Which means that now that you are students and now that you are going to graduate in a couple of years or whenever you are going to, take that opportunity and make sure you take on those responsibilities. Those are the things that are really going to help you move forward, right? Really going to help you. It will define who you are eventually. Because challenges are things that come to everybody, right? It's not something that, they don't pick and say, okay, this person looks like they can handle it, that's why I'm going to give it to them. That's not how it works, right? Everybody has challenges. You may not know it when you see it, but they will definitely have challenges that they are working. Yes? Any questions? Yes.
Have you, as a law professional, faced challenges in AI ethics and the applications of AI in daily life?
Yes. So that's a very good question because as a law firm, we also work with a lot of companies that are building products in the AI space, right? So we work with a lot of startups. So we have a lot of AI build companies that come to us on a daily basis for these questions. Now, I'll tell you what the ethical problem with a lot of the AI related aspects are, right? Now, we have apps and we have, let's say, startups that come up, that use AI, that's machine learning AI, that come up with a solution to the problem you have. So when I say solution to the problem you have, like, for example, if you go to, say, ChatGPT or any of these websites and you ask a question, right? And they will come out with an answer. Now, as an individual who's reading it, the judgment is on me to say, hey, this advice that this software has given me is either correct or it's not correct, or it is correct, but I have to do A, B, and C in order to follow it, right? So the ethical consideration in a situation like that is, how can we hold AI responsible for the solution that it has proposed, right? Because there's no human being sitting behind it, correct? So it's a bunch of software that has been programmed to provide answers to questions that you ask, right? So that's the biggest challenge right now, right? And there's no clear answer to that as to who's going to be responsible. But on the other hand, there are other problems that stem from it. I'll give you an example. There are websites that are using AI, of course, but that are collecting customer data, right? So they are taking your name, your information, maybe your Aadhaar card. Okay, Aadhaar card is the next level. But even if not that, they are asking you information about yourself, right? And then what happens is, they are using that information to their benefit. So at that point of time, the ethical consideration becomes, how much of that information can they use and can they target to the individual? Because I'll give you an example, right? You all use Instagram, correct? So have you noticed that how many of you shop online? Tell me that. So everybody, right? You have some experience shopping online, correct? If you notice, if you're regular on Instagram and you also shop online, let's say you go online and I look for a phone cover for my phone, right? The next time I go onto Instagram will show me ads of phone covers and trinkets for phones and everything related to that, right? How do you think that happens? Anybody? Exactly, right? It's because in many cases, the companies that own all these apps are either owned by the same individual and they have access to the same data, or that data is being shared between the companies that own it, right? So if I'm looking, for example, we had an event in our house, we had a wedding, and I was looking for a specific kind of a print, right? A sari with a specific print, and I had Googled it, right? After that, you won't believe it, Instagram constantly showed me ads with this kind of handloom sari, with this sari print and all of that, right? Constantly. Now the question becomes, I did it on Google, but how did I get it here, right? That is the ethical consideration that we are talking about, right? Either that data is being shared between the parties or it's being owned by the same person, so they have access to the data. So what happens to me as a consumer? As a consumer, now all of my preferences, my likes, my dislikes are being commercialized by someone else. They are using that to their benefit so that they can sell their product to me, right? So how is that fair, right? So the pro or the upside of that is it's great, because now I don't have to go out and I don't have to go down Margosa Road, look in 10 stores, figure out if they have the sari I want or if they have the dress I want, which is good for me, right? But the downside of that is that now I also have to deal with the fact that somebody else knows exactly what I want, when I want, how I want. I don't know how that information can be misused against me. Right? That's the question that, that constantly plagues us all. So, in fact, I wanted to mention one thing. I was discussing with your principal earlier today. One of the problems that we have with AI, which is, what came before that was social media, right? Such a big deal. Everybody was on it. If you think about 20 years ago, for example, it was not so popular, right? When I just started my practice, social media was not all over the place. We didn't have WhatsApp, we didn't have, Facebook had just started, Google had just started, all of that was just in the beginning. This is in the mid-2000s I'm talking about. And right now, if you look at it, everybody has some access to social media in some way, right? My 75-year-old father knows how to operate WhatsApp, does everything there, and he's comfortable. My 11-year-old son, he's not able to sit through a session like this, so he has his iPad with him and he's trying to do something. Right? That's the impact and that's the power of social media that we have. So one of the things that has happened very recently is in Australia and New Zealand, one of the courts have actually held that social media is banned for children under 16 or 18, if I remember. So see, you already know it. And the impact of that is phenomenal, right? Now as a parent, I say that's absolutely the right thing to do because, you know, I want to make sure that my children are protected and they are not out there because we don't know who is on the other side, right? Who's on the other side of the screen and what intent they have or what action they're going to take that will impact the child. And children below 16 are known not to be able to make the judgment call to distinguish right from wrong, correct? Not everybody is going to be able to do that. There are exceptions, but they won't be able to do that. So as a society, it's our responsibility. That's where the ethics comes in, right? It's our responsibility to protect the children and give them an environment where they can come out as normal individuals and not be scarred by some incident that happened due to poor laws that were in place, right? Due to bad regulation that was in place, right? Because eventually those children are going to become members of the society and we have to deal with them. Like it or not, we have to deal with them, right? So those are the places where ethical considerations come into play and very important for us to be aware of that and then try to do whatever is possible to make sure that, you know, we don't get on the wrong side of this, right? It's very easy to get on the wrong side of social media to kind of consume all of the negative traits there. Yeah? All right. Any other questions? Yes?
So how hard is the process of being a lawyer in two different countries? What made you mentally strong and keep going?
What made you mentally strong? Okay.
What just kept you mentally strong that okay, fine, I have to do this. I have to keep this journey, go along.
See, I think there's no one answer to that question. What's your name? I'm sorry. Priya. Okay, so Priya, there's no one answer to that question. Okay. What keeps you mentally strong? See, a career as a lawyer is a long one, right? It starts when you're, you know, whatever, 21, something like that. And the beauty about law, just like doctor, engineer, maybe to some extent, is that you can practice until you're really old, right? Until you drop dead, you can practice. Nobody's going to stop you from practicing, right? So there are times when, you know, you feel like, hey, you know, what is this? Is this something that you love to do? But for me personally, I always wanted to be a lawyer, right? I mean, I had grown up seeing my grandfather. He was a Supreme Court advocate, and you know, he was an MLA, MLC, all of that. So I had always seen him, and I knew that I wanted to do something with the law, right? But to your point about how did you decide to, you know, you do law school in India, then I went to law school in the US, and then did it. Yeah, so that process, it is challenging. It takes a long period of time, and it does take a lot of, you know, you need to constantly tell yourself that you can do it, right? To the point I was making earlier. It's very easy to get demotivated when, you know, you get a bad score on a test, for example, right? Or your teacher comes in, she catches you doing something and then she, you know, tells you off in front of the class and you feel like, oh my God, this is just not right and I'm not able to do it. But you have to remember the larger picture, right? Which is that you've decided, at least for me, I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer, which means that I had to get my education here and then I decided I wanted to do my LLM, which was my master's. So I had to get my education there. I was already there, right? It's like saying, okay, you get into the water, right? If you're thrown into the water, you learn to swim. You know, what do? Otherwise you sink, right? So if you didn't sink, that means you learn to swim and you come out stronger. So you do that, right? There are days that you go down, but what's important is you go back to it the next day. It's like following a diet, right? Many of you are familiar with diets or you followed diets at some point of time or you know someone who's done it, correct? So if you fall off the bandwagon for a day, do you say, okay, fine, you know, this is really bad, I'm never going to be able to do it? Or do you say, okay, let me try again, right? So you have to remember that that resilience is really important, right? You go back and you say, it's okay, yesterday I made a mistake, it's okay, chalo, forget it, let's try again. Let me do that again today, right? Let me go back to class, let me go back to, you know, know the textbook, let me go back to the BEAR Act and see what it says. And that's the only way you keep motivating yourself, right? Because there will always be issues. I'll give you an example. So, I come from a family which is educated and they have seen all of this. It's not new to them, right? But when I was in law school, my dad told me after I graduated the 5th year of law school, he said, I didn't think you'll make it through law school at all because you were so playful. I thought in 3rd year you'll drop off because we had an option. In the 3rd year of law school, we could drop off and then we could continue doing something else. Right? So he told me that I never thought that you will complete law school. So at that time I told him, I said, thank God you didn't tell me that at that time. Because if you had told me that, I would have thought that, okay, it's okay to do that because my father thinks I can't do it. No, what is the big deal, right? Let me do it. So the important thing is, that voice inside your head, you have to tell yourself that you can do it. Whatever it is you decide, right? Whether you want to be a lawyer, a scientist, a doctor, an engineer, or you want to be a housewife, that's perfectly fine too, right? But you have to be happy with that decision and you have to tell yourself that yes, I can do it. Don't ever second guess yourself, right? Don't ever think that, my brother's better than me, so, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. No, you can. You have to tell yourself that motivation, self-motivation is the most important.
Thank you. Ma'am, I have a question. Here.
So, okay.
Ma'am, like you just mentioned earlier, that justice is a little delayed. Completely to the lawyer perspective, right now we have a lack in resources, there's a lack in investments, there's a lack in acts being implemented, like the Women Reservation Act, they are amending, they are discussing everything in Lok Sabha, and then there is NCRT that got banned, and then there is also maternity leave that is lagging again. There were a lot of amendments that were made. So what is your perspective on it, ma'am? Because as a lawyer, it is instinctive to make sure that people are getting the justice. So what is your opinion on all these things, ma'am?
See, I'll tell you one thing, right? And this is one of the biggest reasons that I moved back to India, right? When I came back from the US. It's very easy for us to, sit outside and then criticize what is happening here, right? To say, oh my God, India is so bad, it is so dirty, there's so much pollution, there is this, there is that, nothing happens there. But the reality is, a country of X billion people that's being run in the way that it is being run today has not happened anywhere in the world. I'll tell you that, right? For perspective, United States is 3 times the surface area of India and 1/3 the population of India. Okay? UK is similar. Australia is similar, right? So, for us to assume that things are not going how we would like to assume, we would like it to go from a national perspective, I'm saying, is while hopefully it motivates us to do better, that's not the full picture with what you see, right? For example, to her point, she said maternity is an issue that they are trying to navigate, around maternity. 100% I agree with you, right? It has been delayed, there have been a lot of discussions there. But do you know that the maternity policy in India is one of the better ones if you look at the world? For example, in the United States, I'll give you my own example, right? I had my son there and I did not have maternity leave, right? So at the time that I took off, I didn't get paid for it. I chose to take off for a few months because I wanted to spend time with my newborn and figure out motherhood and all of those things. But I did not get any pay at that point of time. That's the reality of what the maternity policy is in various places in the world, right? But to answer your question, as to what can we do to make it better, I think the answer is not one or two, right? We have to accept that we have a population that is beyond anything that anybody has done, right? And we have to accept that the resources that are given to us and the situation that we are in requires a lot of work and requires a lot of work from all aspects or all sectors of the government, of the society and everything, right? So these things will take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, right? But as the younger generation, you guys have to get involved, right? You have to get involved with the government on the ground, making sure that you do it, right? Like one of the things that I find where people can actually make the most difference is, which is why I really went into this profession, because for me I look at it as, it's like a base degree, right? You get a law degree, it's like a base degree, and then you can do anything after that. So if you decide that, to a point, I want to do something to, increase the speed or the efficiency with which the government is working, you can go to civil services, right? That's a phenomenal area where you go in and you can do something to actually change the course of how the country is moving, how the city is, progressing, how the people are interacting with their day-to-day aspects, right? And if you do law as a degree and then go into civil services, then it's phenomenal, right? You're already, 5, strides ahead of everybody else in that aspect. If you decide on the other hand that, I don't want to do civil services, but I want to do something for the public, and you say, okay, I want to run for election someday, right? I know politicians have a bad rap, but they actually do a lot for the country, right? They do it right way. You can still do that with a law degree, right? The fact that you have a law degree is actually going to help you advance that cause. If you decide on the other hand that she's done some research on, the various laws that are in place, right? If you decide I want to do that policy, right? You still do a law degree and then you do that, you have that as an option, right? So from the perspective of, how can we make it better, I think it's in our hands as the youngsters in this room. You really have to make a decision and say, okay, I'm going to stick with it, right? Not just, okay, I came to college, I'm going to finish my 3rd year degree, my 4th year degree, and then, retire and go back. You're not going to do that, right? You want to be able to contribute to the society in some way. Whatever profession you end up choosing, make sure you stick with it. Very, very important, you stick with it. It's okay if things mess up along the way. It's okay if things don't go exactly how you plan. You want to take a break, you take a break. But then you come back to it, right? That resilience is the most important.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Yes.
I wanted to ask, if the networking is very important in the field of law, because as I wanted to do law, but my parents told that no, if you don't have any family background in law and all, it's really very hard to pursue law.
No, that's a very good point to bring up, right? Which is networking. Now, I'll tell you one thing. Networking is very important and you need to network right from now. All of you, right? Irrespective of what profession you're going to, you need to network. And what is networking? Networking is building a relationship that's outside of the work relationship that you have, right? Which is, take a genuine interest in the person. It can be your neighbor, it can be your, teacher that you have here, it can be a professor, it can be an article you wrote and you meet another student somewhere else. All of these are relationships that you have to build over time, right? So you build your own network. In fact, you look around this room, right? In 20 years from now, half these people are going to be very successful in various companies, in various positions in the society, right? If you build that relationship right from now, it's so much easier for you to pick up the phone at that time and say, hey, listen, I'm coming there, this is what I need, and is this something you can help me out with, right? And that happens in reality. I'm telling you this from my own experience, right? That's number one. The second thing to your point is, and you're right, because a lot of people have that impression that if you have to be a lawyer, then you have to have a lawyer background. You have to figure out if it really makes sense, because I don't have anybody. It's like Bollywood in some sense, right? You need to have somebody there in order to, become famous. I'll tell you, law is no more like that, right? Which is why I said that you have options. Now, litigation is the one option that everybody has seen, right? You would have seen different shows, you would have heard stories, you would have looked at various aspects, right from suits to law and order to all of these aspects, which are great. But there are several other careers that require a law degree that are also very successful. Corporate law is one, right? There are several law firms that will take a look at lawyers who graduate, that have no background, to your point, and that train them from start and, go from there, right? There are in-house positions that require lawyers. Again, no connections there, right? So there are tech companies like your Google and your Facebook and your Meta, all of these large companies also do that. But there are smaller companies that also require lawyers in-house. There is civil services. like I said, after you finish your law degree, a lot of people decide to go into civil services, which is you write the exam, and then if you do well, then you go from there. You can also look at becoming a prosecutor, which is you work for the government, right? When you work for the government, you have a steady stream, you have a steady income, and then you have a steady flow of cases as well, right? And you learn that and you go ahead. So once you do a law degree or once you become a lawyer, it's no more restricted to, oh, I have to go to court, I have to get I have to get cases, or I have to find clients, I have to notarize. No more. There's a lot of options once you finish your law degree. So I wouldn't make a decision based solely on the fact that I don't have any connections in law. If you, on the other hand, enjoy any of these aspects that we discussed, right? It could be negotiation, it could be argument, it could be research, it could be reading, something as simple as reading, then I would say definitely consider a career in law.
So worked in 2 different countries and basically 2 different ecosystems.
Correct.
So what's that one factor that amuses you and one factor that you think Indian judiciary is lacking?
That's very interesting. I'll tell you, I have a lot to say about this, but I'll keep it short. I used to work for the family court in Santa Clara County in California, in the US. Okay, I spent a long time with family court and with the family court judge because I was his essentially right hand. So I used to summarize the cases, I used to take notes, listen to trials. And the system there is a trial, right? We don't have jury and trials here in India, but we have that in the US, right? So people would come in and there would be, there would be a 12-member jury, 7-member jury that would sit in, people would present their cases, etc. And because I was working for the judge, I had the opportunity to summarize all of this, sit down with him, write case notes, all of that, right? I tell you, the biggest challenge we have in India is the problem of plenty for the judges. When I say problem of plenty, what I mean is they have too much on their plate, right? They don't have a way to streamline that. We need more judges and we need a process that can streamline that entire judiciary system. Because I'll tell you, my judge that I was working for in the US, he had specific days of the week allocated to specific aspects of it. So for example, on Monday, from Monday morning to lunch on Monday, his only job was to look at the rooster and see which cases are coming up and then prepare for the cases on Monday. That's it. Right? He would not hear any cases, he would not hear any clients. Monday afternoon, what he would do is take continuances, right? So which is like a journal. So if people needed to come in and say, hey, I need to reschedule, I won't be able to come in this week, I want to come in next week. That's all he was doing on Monday afternoon. On Tuesday, he had the opportunity to prepare, right? So prepare for trial because Friday used to be trial. So Tuesday morning, he had the opportunity to prepare. Tuesday afternoon, he would hear cases for the first time. That is, if this case came in and it was the first time, right? That would happen Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday and Thursday were the only 2 days he was hearing cases on a repeated basis. So if you look at his routine, he had the opportunity to actually pay attention to each case that came before him, do some research, read the file, come back to it, right? Whereas if you look at our judges, poor thing, they are working from 9 in the morning all the way till whatever 4 or 5 until the court closes, and after that they are spending more time in their chambers trying to figure out what happened. And during the day that they have, instead of dealing with whatever, let's say 10 cases, they have 150 cases they have to get through, right? They are also human at the end of the day. So we need a better system in place, to your point, right? It's very difficult to sustain with the kind of, which is why the whole point about justice delayed, right? Which is that they're not able to do it. We need a lot more judges. And this is where you guys come in, right? There is a new position now where they are providing young lawyers the opportunity. Right after you graduate, you can actually write an exam and you can apply to be in the judiciary as a judge, which was not the case prior, right? Before, you had to have practiced for a certain number of years and then shown that you're able to do it, and then only could you come into the judiciary. But now things have changed, right? So you can actually take an exam, and then there's a training period, of course, and then they will post you to different places, but then you become a judge after that, which is something that our country really needs. We don't have enough judges. Our judiciary system is really stretched thin, right? They really need the help that they can get. So if that's something that interests you, then you should definitely look at it. Yeah.
opportunity to like apply management principles to streamline these processes, like for policymakers or someone who is not from core law background?
Apply, what do you mean? You mean that you want to get into policy,
Yes.
but then you have a management background. Is that what you're saying?
I am studying BA, but to manage the workload of judges and the sheer amount of work,
Yeah.
kind of leverage this, streamline.
So there are a few solutions that people are developing right now. In fact, we are working on one as a startup, right, where we're trying to see if we can streamline it. Now, there are apps that try to streamline it. For example, during COVID, this became a big deal, right? Like courts in India were never allowing this video presence, right? Like Zoom and Google Meet, thank you. Google Meet and all of that. They were not permitting that, right? But now the courts have permitted it. That's one thing. And then a few years back, I think I want to say more than 10 years back, what happened in the High Court, which was phenomenal for people like us. When I was a student, I used to run around. When I was a law student, we used to get a case list in the morning, right? Early in the morning at 7 o'clock, he'll come and drop the case list. That's when we know that, okay, my matter is going to get called today, or, it's not there. Once we get it, then we run to the senior's office and we say, okay, sir, these are the matters, and, we arrange all the files. That's not the case anymore at all, right? Now, what happens is when you go to the court, every court has a display board outside. I don't know if you guys have gone to the court, but there are rooms like this where, there is a witness box and then there's the podium where the judge sits, and that's the, public audience. And then there's a door that, through which you enter. Now, outside the door, there's a board, an electronic board that hangs that tells you what your case number is that's being called. That was a big step up for us, right? I'm talking about maybe 15, 20 years ago, something like that. That was a big step up. So these are all things that are efforts that are being made to make the whole thing electronic, more predictable, and more easier for us to assess and plan our day. But it is going to take some time. So if you can come up with something like that, then fantastic, right? Then the challenge becomes, let's get the court to adopt it. Right? So if we can get one state to adopt it, then it will spread throughout more for us. So that's the way that we look at it.
Thank you, ma'am. I have another question now. Ma'am, right now, youngsters, they have a fire in them to start a business. But then normally they get told that you need some experience and then you can work in the same field as an entrepreneur. So what do you think, ma'am? Should we wait for experience, get the experience and then start, or should we start and then learn in the process?
See, very good question. And I'll answer that with two caveats, right? I say this being the lawyer for literally hundreds of startups, most of whom have been started by people right out of school, right? So from your IITs to your BITS Pilani to other engineering colleges everywhere, it is a big thing, especially after all the stories you hear about dropouts, being very, very successful. It's fantastic to be able to do something right out of law school where you don't have to go, right out of whatever school you go to, where you don't have to go out and, kind of get the experience, which obviously comes at a price, right? You get that at a price. You have to figure out what line of business you're in or what industry you're in to see if that's going to work, right? Now, the reason that your Facebook and your Google and all of these stories that you hear about dropouts and how being that successful is because they are in the tech sector. Tech, fortunately or unfortunately, lends itself to that, right? While experience is important, it's very, very important, there's nothing that comes close to it. Tech gives you the opportunity to be able to do that right as a student or right out of it, right? Once you get a hang of it, once you get a grip of it, if you're really good at the subject that you're working on, then you might be able to figure it out without that experience, right? But for most of us, what ends up happening is that it becomes a lot easier to work on something of our own if we have an experience to fall back on, right? We get the confidence to say, okay, yes, we can do it because we've seen it done. You've seen it done for 5 other people. Let's say as a lawyer today, I see how my clients have dealt with situations and they've come to me and I've tried to problem solve. So tomorrow if that situation happens to me, I know that, hey, this is the solution and this worked for me, right? So if you think that your skill set and your confidence are at a level where I can go out and do it, then great, nothing like it, right? And tech lends itself well to that. But if you think that in your profession you need that experience, like for doctors for example, right? Now, if there's I'll ask you a question. Let's say that you have a fever which develops into pneumonia, right? Let's assume that you have a fever that develops into pneumonia. Now, are you going to go to a medical resident? A medical resident is somebody who has just graduated from medical school and who's doing a residency program in a hospital. Will you go to a medical resident, or will you go to the doctor who's the head of the department, or who's got a few years of experience? You'll want to go to the doctor, right? Why? You don't know that the resident is bad. You don't know that that person has failed in his medical school or has come first in his medical school, none of that, right? But people will trust you if you have the experience, correct? But if you're able to, because of your skill and your confidence, which is why I said tech lends itself well to that, right? You can prove yourself. You can build an app that solves that problem, like Blinkit, for example. Whoever thought that there was a problem that people want things in 10 minutes and that they were not ready to wait half an hour to go to the store, buy it and come back, right? But somebody did it. The market proved that yes, this is an app that we want and we are ready to pay money for it, and it became successful, correct? So if you have that skill and that confidence, then great, it's fantastic to go with.
Thank you, ma'am. This session has provided us with diverse perspectives and deeper insight into leadership, challenges and opportunity for women today. Thank you, ma'am, for such a thought-provoking and enriching discussion. Can we give a round of applause? I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Ms. Ashita Bhagwan, Ms. Ashita Bhagwan, for sharing her invaluable insights. I request Dr. Nanda Kulkarni ma'am to please give away the token of appreciation. Thank you to our respected principal, Dr. Nanda Kulkarni ma'am, Managing Trustee, retired Shri K. Jairaj IAS at his absentia, Director, Dr. Sarvishnu Datta ma'am in her absentia, Dr. Annadanesh BA at his absentia, to our respected faculty members, to our panelists for their engaging discussion, to the organizing team for their hard work, and to all the participants for making this event meaningful. Thank you all for being a part of this inspiring journey. With this, we come to the end of today's session. Let us continue to learn, lead, and uplift each other. Thank you all and have a wonderful day ahead.
We'll wait for 5 minutes. You have to fill the feedback form as well as there's a write-up which you are going to give for 4 or 5 students. So please wait for 5 minutes and then you can move back to your classes. And before that, orally you always give in the form of number. Out of 10, how much you want to give for the Women in Leadership Series 28? Out of 10, how much marks that you want to give? 10. Everybody? 10. Okay, for madam, out of 10, ma'am has given some information which will be helpful for your better career, right? Out of 10, how much marks that you want to give? For ma'am? Yes? Everybody? Okay, 10? Agreed? Thank you.